good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Labster webinar here, seeing a demo of the product. My name is Ben Bowles. As you can see on the screen, you should be able to see I'm a Regional Director of Scientific Partnerships. I help manage our partnerships with higher ed institutions across South Carolina and Tennessee. I'll be giving you a rundown of the platform today, an overview of the design of the simulations and how it looks as a faculty member using Labster. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Be happy to answer any questions you have. And if you do have specific questions about how to use Labster in your courses, our reps will be following up with you after the webinar so that you can view that and speak with them and get some specifics about your course. Today, we're going to look at, I mentioned overall the design of Labster, how it's set up, how you can use it in your courses, that kind of thing. Here where we say we're $1 million lab for every student, I always like to share that Labster is made by scientists for scientists. We have a team here, many of us, not just our scientists, but our educators have history of teaching and working in education. So we have a passion not only for science, but also for teaching. Our simulation started out as an educator who was just trying to find a way to reach that back row of students, the ones who show up to class but don't pay attention. It's a weird population. I knew that there was a better way to reach them. I made the first simulations. These first simulations were video gamey in nature. The idea there was that the students had to practice applying some of the concepts in new, exciting ways. And it was so effective at preparing the students for applying the knowledge, how it works inside, how that knowledge applies to experimental design in the lab, that we had to make more simulations. You'll see that we'll go through a video shortly here, and you'll see that there's a few core elements of design that are across our entire catalog of simulations. The first here where it says handling lab accidents, the idea here is that materials that are toxic, caustic, maybe time or cost prohibitive that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do in a real lab environment, you can do virtually with Labster. I'm thinking of your PCR machines, your NMR machines, maybe have particularly nasty acids that students that don't have any familiarity with them, there's some caution around being able to maybe use those tools or even getting time on them. With a virtual tool, that's not a worry. All your students can have as much access as they like from the comfort of their own home. In the middle here where it says learning protocol, we take great care to make sure we follow proper SOPs, proper lab procedures to give your students the training they need to understand the instruments and the tools that they're going to experience when they are in the lab. Find that this helps reduce the cognitive load for students. And that way, when they are in the lab in person, they can pay attention to the science that's happening in front of them rather than worrying about which tool they're supposed to use. And the last part on the right here, where it says building molecules, I think of this as the magic school bus effect. This is a virtual lab. We get to have fun with it, so we can shrink ourselves down. We can put a molecule on our desk and look at the three-dimensional shape of it. We can put the solar system on our desk. We can play with scale here, so we have some fun with it. And you'll see some examples of that in the video we have coming up here. Before we go into there, I want to mention that Labster has been here for a number of years. We have been helping educators, whether they were fully online, whether they're in person, for a number of years now. And now there's over 4,000 users of Labster globally. This is a program that is trusted from the high school level all the way to medical schools are using these simulations, maybe to supplement or maybe to be a standalone learning experience for their students. And I think you'll see why. How to use this. This is a quick mention of just some of the courses that are covered by Labster. We have over 200 simulations and we are continuing to roll out new updates to our catalog all the time. So stay tuned, look out for any updates about what else will be coming up. We have another release coming later this fall. In this video, this will give you a good overview of what Labster is, how this applies. You'll see some of the pedagogy here of how we're set up. This is across our whole catalog though. I did mention we have over 200 simulations covering mostly your core science topics in STEM, but pretty much biology, chemistry, and physics are where the core of our simulations are. Each of these are what we call the gamified case study. They cover 1 to 2 lectures and 1 lab practical. It'll take about a week's worth of your course material in our full-length simulations that are 30 to 45 minutes for most students. We have heard from faculty that it was important to have a bit more flexibility in using the tool. So we are experimenting with short, targeted simulations we're calling mini simulations. These are 5 to 15 minutes. They're much shorter, much more focused to help students on just core topics or techniques that they might be struggling with in their lecture or in their lab. Once the students are in the lab here, each simulation is still going to have a storyline, still have that gamification. That provides the connective tissue between your theories in your lecture and the lab protocol, the experimental design that they're going through in the lab. And when they are in the lab here, they can do it incorrectly. Your students, they're still putting on gloves, goggles, and lab coats, but as for the procedure, they can do it wrong and blow up the lab, set things on fire. I hear from instructors sometimes that the discussion boards and their LMS will be full of stories of students saying, how do you put the fire out of the trash can? And all the students saying, I didn't know you could set the trash can on fire, and having to go back and put it out here. Overall idea is these students are going to be learning by doing. They're going to have productive failure. And as an instructor, your job is just to pick the simulations that align with your course learning outcomes. This integrates directly with most major learning management systems, and it'll be automatically graded. So once your course is set up, it takes usually under 15 minutes, I find, for most faculty. Once you're set up, you're good to go. It'll be automatically graded and you're set for the semester. Now we're going to dive into the faculty resource page. This is the page that faculty members are using when looking at our content before they integrate it into their course. On this page, the first thing you'll see is our new tab. For some of you, this might all be new, so it won't be so relevant, but I call attention to this new tab because we, as I mentioned before, are always rolling out new updates, and we want the current users of the platform to see that we've heard them and that we're rolling out new updates. This new tab will always be here so that you can see what is different with Labster since you last logged in, and you can utilize that new tool that just came out. We have a Getting Started tab for those that are first looking at Labster, a good introductory video to get an idea of what this looks like, and a Teacher Resources tab here as well. This, as you can see, has information on our product, how to set it up, and some inspiration for how other instructors are using Labster to think about creative ways to implement this into your course. Simulations tab, this is the bread and butter though. This is where it gets fun. You can see here that we have a whole suite of courses that we help cover. And this is not exhaustive. This is just the courses that we most commonly see Labster applied for. And as an instructor using Labster, you're not limited to some of the specific content in here. You might be teaching an introductory biology course for college level, but you might find it appropriate. Some of your students might need to review some of their concepts from high school. You can go back to the high school level, pull those simulations in, and make sure your students are getting the foundational understanding that they need. I'm not going to general chemistry here. One of the topics that I struggled with a lot as a student was understanding equilibrium. I'm going to jump into that one right now. But as you can see, we have all of these simulations are also on our website. But when you have the faculty resource page, you can dive in and see a bit more detail here. Here we have a video of a developer playing through the simulation. This is a bit quicker than a student might be going through the simulation. This person made the simulation. They know all the answers, so they can go through quicker than a student would. But it starts out, as you can see in this virtual lab, this is a real world lab environment. And we have our lab pad here. Most of the going through these simulations, the lab pad is going to be the students and your tool for interacting with the other material. The theory tab on the top there, where it's marked, it says theory, that's going to align with the OpenStax textbook, the free OER textbook from Rice University. That way your students, if they're getting stuck or confused or don't know what's going on and they just need a little bit more information, they don't have to leave Labster. They don't have to go elsewhere and look at materials. Everything they need to be successful is provided for them inside the lab. We'll jump ahead here. We're going to actually see some real science happening rather than just text on the screen. Students are going to get their hands clean, prepared. And this is a look inside of a syringe to watch the chemical compound equilibrate. This video is here for instructors to use and quickly assess, is this the kind of simulation I'm looking for? Is this covering the content I need? But when you have access here, play the simulation yourself. Click this, you'll be able to try it on your own. And these are all lab supplements. Something I didn't discuss quite enough yet, I'll jump back onto that page, but we have a whole suite, a whole ecosystem of supplements here. Again, that just goes back to the idea I mentioned earlier that this is another tool in the instructor's tool belt. It's up to you to decide how to use this tool best. We're here to help. figure that out. But at the end of the day, we want to turn over all the tools we have and let you be the instructor and the educator that you know how to be. If I scroll down, I'll be able to get a quick understanding what's being covered in the lab, what are the learning objectives, and is this the appropriate rigor for my course? Back on the page, looking at all of our simulations, again highlighting across the top, these are all of our ancillary materials. Our lab manuals, lab reports, these are to help students as they're going through the lab, but also as a post-lab activity. We've also turned over all of our 2D and 3D assets, so our animations, our illustrations that we use in the simulations. We heard from instructors that they needed to use those, maybe in their lecture if they could. So we are continuing to add to this catalog, and this is just, again, one of those tools to help you use this tool the way that you best see fit. I want to mention, though, that this is not just a setup. We didn't just make these simulations and say, oh, this must work well. This would be cool. We've seen a number of use cases for these platforms. So when I say that this can be a fully online lab experience, that is the case. There are fully online bachelor's in biological sciences degrees that are using Labster as their lab component. This also works great as a lecture activity, maybe in a flipped classroom environment, maybe as a post lecture to help reinforce some of those concepts that students are just really struggling with. Lastly, my favorite use case is the pre-lab exercise. When I was a science student getting my degree in physics, some of my other biology and chemistry labs I was woefully unprepared for, and the pre-labs we had, while well-intentioned, didn't prepare me to understand the actual techniques that I was going to be going through in that lab. When I was a student, I would have loved to have Labster before I went into the titration lab. We did some stoichiometric calculations. I didn't really understand what was happening. This would have been a great tool to help me understand how to actually operate the instruments. And you might ask, okay, but does this work? Well, good news, there's been some research done. We have I want to say about a dozen peer-reviewed articles that have been published analyzing and looking at, does Labster have an impact on student learning? On the screen here, you'll see the results of a study from 2014. This was published in Nature Biotechnology. As students first took an exam, they had a pre-test and a post-test, and in between, we were measuring what's the most effective way to deliver material. So the researchers at this study tried lectures, a traditional teaching method. They tried just Labster, and they tried a mixture of the two. Well, on the left, you can see here the most effective method for teaching that was found here. Traditional teaching certainly helped students retain some knowledge. But the students that used Labster in conjunction with their traditional teaching saw a 101% increase in their learning outcomes. Again, I want to highlight this. When using Labster in conjunction with your current teaching methods, students saw a dramatically increased performance in their student outcomes. And it wasn't just higher outcomes. On the right here, we can see that knowledge was retained much longer. Students had half a Z-score higher of knowledge retention compared to students that didn't use Labster. This comes down to the design and what we understand from learning. The pedagogy of these simulations is based on active learning and giving students the option to make decisions and to learn from those decisions. Using that in conjunction with a guided instructor teacher right there next to them to help them understand why some of those maybe mistakes happened or the outcomes that they didn't anticipate is the best way that we have seen to learn using the platform. Another study showed that not only is this effective, but the students who benefit from this are the students who might have been left out of STEM in other ways. Here, this is another study published in 2016 that was looking at different student populations as they come in. I'm thinking of your introductory courses where you don't know what student prerequisite knowledge is. No surprise here, if we look at the findings, we can see that our high knowledge students did really well, they're highly motivated, and they feel good about it. Little internal validity for us, we knew that. But what really stood out to me when I first saw this, again, this is personal for me. I went to, my first exam I ever failed was my physics exam, crisis of identity of, do I belong in physics? Am I a physics student? Because I failed my first one. I just came in with lower prerequisite knowledge and I needed to work through that. I was this low knowledge group, and you can see that students, when using Labster, being able to get a lot of extra practice, not only went from a failing to a passing grade on average, they dramatically decreased the knowledge gap and saw much higher levels of motivation and self-efficacy. These students that are using Labster are leaving the classroom, leaving your course, feeling like scientists, feeling like, yes, I can do this. I have the skill set that I need. Overall, this is a holistic approach to the platform. Labster uses a number of modalities to make sure that your students are understanding and learning the topics appropriately. They're going to take the theory that they learn in the lecture. They're going to apply that to see, do they have an understanding of the concepts? And they'll be assessed on that. Overall, this is a platform that is here for your students to practice whatever skills they might need. Whether you have high performing students that you want to stretch a bit more and see how far you can take their learning, or you have some students who need a little bit of extra practice before they can get in and really understand what's happening in the lab. Whatever the case is, this is a one-stop flexible solution for your course needs. I want to thank you for your time, and now we'll open up for any questions that you might have. I do see one question coming in. Is Labster geared towards high school students? So yes, there are some simulations that are designed specifically with high schools in mind. We do have a team of high school regional directors here that can help you figure out what is most applicable for your courses, but we do have a whole suite of simulations designed specifically for that student population in mind. We'll give it another moment here for any other questions that might come in. As a reminder, after the webinar, recording will be sent out, and you have the option for the individual reps will be reaching out to you to see if you'd like a more hands-on demo that you can get your specific questions answered and get yourself on the faculty resource page so you can try some of these simulations. I'll sit tight for a few more minutes for any other questions, but if this got you the information you needed, feel free to hop off. I'll stand by for more questions though. Seeing none, no more questions in here. Again, thank you for your time today. Thank you for the attention and allowing me to share what I get to do every day for work, and that's share this great tool for you and your students. Again, this will be following up with a recording sent out to your emails, and our reps will be following up with any questions you might have. Thank you.